That was in the script, and I'm pleased you got it. I discovered 90% of people have no fucking clue what that is. Do you know who Greyfriars Bobby was?
No.
Raise your hands if you know who Greyfriars Bobby was.
Dog from Edinburgh.
There you go, that's 12 people. Okay. The educated one. No, it's, yeah, Greyfriars Bobby was a real dog. If you're in Edinburgh, outside the real Greyfriars Cemetery, there's a bronze. He's a guy, John Gray was a guy who died, and his dog was so bereft, it's absolutely true, that when they buried him, he just wept and wept and stayed on the grave. And they thought, well, what are we going to do? Because we can't keep this dog in here. So they tried to get him away, and they'd have to kill him to get him away. And he was there something like 9 years. Stayed on the grave. And if anyone came too close, it's like, get off. And he became a tourist attraction. Queen Victoria came to see Greyfriars. Walt Disney made a movie about it. There you go. But so yes, that is Greyfriars Bobby. Yes, there's a lot of stuff like that in the movie that just goes over me. Anything else? No? Good night.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, seeing Jamie Lee Curtis's boobs in Trading Places was a big deal for me as a 10-year-old. I just want to say thank you.
As a 10-year-old?
Yeah, as a 10-year-old.
Now you don't care.
Oh, yeah, no.
Now you see the
No, it's still a big deal now. It's still huge. But my question is, you've worked with so many comedians. Is there anyone that, like, stands out that you were just, like, always in stitches behind the stage, just going, like, can you stop making me laugh so much, or anything like that?
Trying to figure out what those two things have in common.
Well, I'm just saying, Trading Places is one of my favorite movies, so, you know.
I'm sorry?
Trading Places is one of my favorite movies, like, all the gags that...
They're a lot of fun. I've worked with everyone from George Burns to John Belushi.
Yeah.
I worked with Jerry Lewis. I mean, I worked with Steve Martin and Chevy, and Dan Aykroyd was brilliant, and so many. I mean, I worked with millions of comedians, and I find, truthfully, that straight actors tend to do comedy better, especially the ones who aren't aware that they're doing comedy. It was something that the Zuckers took from me. They did it in Airplane. They hired all these straight guys, and you know, Peter Graves in that movie is brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
You ever see a Gladiator movie, son?
Yeah.
I don't think a comedian could say that. Make fun. Yes.
Yes, I actually want to ask about a movie that precedes your directorial experience. Kelly's Heroes.
Yes.
What? Any stories about that?
I was a gopher on Kelly's Heroes.
No, I understand, but
when
you
I was
must have
18,
some
they call them production assistants now. That was Behind the Iron Curtain, 1969. That's when it meant something. It was really weird. It was very scary. Guys with guns and hammering sickles. Do you know there's a magazine published in the UK called Cinema Retro? You heard of it?
Yeah.
This month or last month, they did a whole issue on Kelly's Heroes. And they interviewed everybody, and they got photographs. It's a huge thing. It's like a serious study of this ridiculous movie. And what's funny is I'm like, where's Waldo in it? Because I'm like, ooh, look, there's John. Ooh, look. That was the best time. That was one of the best times of my life. I turned 19 in Yugoslavia. I had all the pleasure of filmmaking and none of the responsibility. And you're working with, you know, Clint Eastwood. Women came from all over the world to fuck Clint Eastwood. All of Europe, they would line up. And, you know, Telly Savalas, who was wonderful. And I was a great experience. And Don Rickles, I know all those guys. You know, and Kelly's Heroes had a big impact on me because, like, that's where I met a lot of the Brits who I later made American Werewolf with, Alf Joyne. I mean, just a lot of people. And Don Rickles. And I'd met Don Sutherland as a mailboy at Fox the year before when he did MASH. And Bundy Marton, Andrew Marton, was a great Hungarian-American director, most famous for second unit stuff, like directing The Chariot Race and Ben-Hur. And he was the American director on The Longest Day. And he directed action. Billy Wilder used to say that he's going to have a scene where the boss wants to seduce the secretary, but she won't go for it, so he chases her around the desk, but he'd have to call Bundy in to direct that. But he directed, you know what movies he directed by himself? King Solomon's Mine, Stuart Granger. He did a lot of movies, Men in Fighting, hundreds of movies. Really cool movie. If you ever want to see a really interesting movie called The Devil Makes Three, the first film shot in Berlin after the war, starring Gene Kelly and Pierre Angely, and it's about neo-Nazis, and it's really, the whole city's destroyed. Before Billy Billy Wilder. I mean, before anyone shot, that was the first movie. Do you want to hear this story? There's an interesting story, which is Hitler had a place called Berchtesgaden, which was his, the Eagle's Lair. It was his place up in the mountains. And General Marshall did not want Berchtesgaden to become a shrine, so he ordered the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to demolish it. Well, Bundy's sister, he was Hungarian, his sister, the Baroness Hatbany, or Elizabeth Martin, she was married to a Hungarian baron, and when the Nazis came, he was very involved in the underground. When they came into her house, and she was Jewish, they didn't know that, but they came in and they found this piece of paper, they knew it was code, they broke all her fingers and tortured her, and it was the part of a bridge gate. That's what it was. Anyway, but so she was sent to a concentration camp, and the commandant's wife, called Treblinka, the commandant's wife saw her. She was Hungarian. Went, that's the Baroness Hatbany. I want her to be my maid. So that's how Bushy survived the war. Meanwhile, her brother, Bundy, in Hollywood, and George Martin in Hollywood, these two guys are desperately trying to find her with the red, whatever, she's disappeared. And so now the war is over, Bundy's in Berlin, she's in pre-production, and the Red Cross contacts him. We found, what? Great, so she comes to Berlin. She weighed like 88 pounds or something when she was brought to Berlin. And they were so happy, this big thing, and the guy comes in and says, Bundy, they're destroying Berchtesgaden, which is where the conclusion of the movie is a shootout. He went, they can't, I've got to shoot there. So he turned to Elizabeth, to the Baroness Hatbany, he said, do you speak German? Yes. Do you speak Hungarian? Yes. Do you speak English? Yes. Do you speak French? Yes. Okay, you're now an MGM employee, and she supervised the demolition of Berchtesgaden. Wow. Isn't that amazing? Anyway, when you see the movie, it's still up. Now there's like 6 walls left, and it has become a shrine for neo-Nazis, just like they were afraid. Anyway, it's a long story. But it was a great time of my life. I always say I'm a high school dropout, and I started working at 17 in Milram at Fox. And I always say that Kelly's Heroes is my military experience, and Animal House is my college experience. They are. Anything else? Yeah.
What goes through your mind when you watch your film with the rest of the audience?
Oh gosh, it's different all the time. It's difficult for a filmmaker to separate the movie from the experience of making the movie. So sometimes it's like, man, it was cold when we did that, or God, I wish that actor was better, or whatever. Making a film, how many people here are filmmakers? All right, making a movie is constant compromise. I mean, only Kubrick and David Lean and a couple of other guys in history didn't compromise. Chaplin, maybe, on straw. You can't, you have no choice. You have a finite amount of time. And when you see a movie that works,
That was creepy, man.
it's kind of scary, isn't it? It's red. Do you ever see 10 Commandments?
Yeah, Chaplin.
Anyway,
I think you pissed off Chaplin.
I see, things I like that work the way I intended them in movies, and things that worked not the way I intended, but I'm happy with, and things I'll never be happy with. Yeah.
I think next week anyone and I'm going to move in London. I love the way we movies. But when I see that movie, the first reaction was the werewolf walking like a wolf, not like a man.
I love that question because just think about how nuts that is. I love that. When I made Innocent Blood, people said they didn't drive a stake through their hearts. It's like, hello, they're werewolves, vampires. They're not real. Every movie you make, every movie, every book creates its own rules. A lot of what we accept as traditional vampire lore, Bram Stoker made it up. Yeah. Before that, Barney the Vampire. I mean, so many, we make it up, So much of what every one of us, because we grow up with this stuff, it's become our mythology. So we think of these things like the rules. Do you know where silver bullets come from? Kurt Siodmak, who wrote the first movie that was in, was listening to the Lone Ranger on the radio. He said, silver bullets, that's great. You can melt that crucifix. I've met people who go, you know, you can't kill something unless there's a silver bullet. And in Werewolf, the movie that Kurt Siodmak made, The Wolfman, what he did that was new in The Wolfman was, up until then, werewolves were always evil. Dracula turns into a wolf in the novel. Witches and warlocks could turn into wolves. You know, in The Wolfman, it's the first time the werewolf himself is a victim. And it's not like Jekyll and Hyde. In Jekyll and Hyde, when Dr. Jekyll becomes Hyde, that's him. That's his evil, lustful self, you know, coming out to split personality. Now, in The Wolfman, for the first time, the wolf monster, the Wolfman, completely separate than Larry Talbot. Lon Chaney, through 5 movies, he's trying to kill himself or cure himself. And in the Wolfman, it always bothered me. Do you remember when Lon Chaney's attacked? He's attacked by Bela, the gypsy, played by Bela Lugosi. Yeah. Do you remember that scene? Well, that's a 4-legged, it's a wolf. Then he turns into a 2-legged wolf. Call Kurt Siodmak, ask him. I wanted it to turn into a monster. I like the idea of a human body, the metamorphosis, to genuinely transform into something else.
But the transformation is so great. In fact.
Well, that's Rick Baker. I wrote American Werewolf in London in 1969 when I was in Yugoslavia, actually. And that script got me a lot of work as a writer, but no one would touch it. You know, they would go, "This is great. You want to buy it or make it? Get the fuck out of here." You know? And so it wasn't until I had made 3 movies in a row that made a lot of money, which was Kentucky Fried made a lot of money, Animals made a lot of money, Blues Brothers made a lot of money. What do you want to do now? This. And it was like, get the fuck out of here. So I made it independently. I, borrowed the money from a bank. It was called a negative pickup, and made it. And it's amazing. People are still watching. Have you seen the Blu-ray? It's very cool. I love Blu-ray. I was worried that the Blu-ray would show all the seams in Rick's work. And actually it makes Rick's work look better, especially all the detail and dead people.
It's contrasted too. It really,
yeah, it's really cool.
nicely.
You already asked a question. Who has it? You, sir.
I know originally Ghostbusters was supposed to be Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi like traveling kind of through time fighting ghosts. Did you have anything to do with that?
I never heard that. I was never involved with Ghostbusters at all, ever. I read somewhere recently that I turned it down. I wouldn't have turned Ghostbusters down. No, that's Ivan Reitman developed that with Danny, for Danny and John. There was no time travel that I know of in it. And they made a big success of it.